Hey everyone, this is Stacy Overby. I am a graphic designer and author with Three Furies Press. A couple things I have out are a poetry collection called Scatharan, based on mostly Celtic mythology, but other mythologies as well, and a space opera sci-fi novel series called Black Ops Novels. Tattoos is out, Scars is about to come out. So thank you for joining me for this quick coffee break with Joe Compton and Go Indie Now. Thank you so much for having me on again. So question number one, what is the point within your creative process that you decide more times than not a character's fate? You got me. That's the short answer. I don't really, most of the time, know. I am very much a pantser. I just kind of have a half-formed idea in my head. I start writing. Here we go. Sometimes I get kind of an idea of here's where things are going. For example, in Scars, book 2 of a Black Ops novel series, kind of had some notions that Sean was going to go through a whole lot of things. Exactly what and where was a little more up in the air. Book 3 is being drafted, and at that one, I knew the end. I knew how Major Wade's book had to end. So there you go. There's even a little spoiler. Book 3 is going to be about Major Wade. But a lot of times I really don't know. I'm kind of along for the ride, so to speak. So question number 2, once you have a character's fate decided, how often, as in a percentage, would you say that fate has changed? Well, again, if I actually had one decided, I would say a good half the time, probably more, it ends up changing as I go, because all of a sudden I'm writing, I discover something else happens, a plot point, a character, something that happens I wasn't thinking of. I was thinking the story was going one way, and all of a sudden it goes another way. And it changes some of that fate. Not always. Like I said, for example, Major Wade's book 3, that'll be coming out hopefully next year if I get the thing written, is actually mostly drafted already. And I knew very early on this was where it was going. And even as different plot points, different things came up, I knew that's what was happening. Sean's book was a little bit different. Scars kind of went where I was going with it, but not totally. So maybe 50-50. Or question 3. What was the main reason for the change? Fans who love them convince you, you fall in or out of love with them, the story shifts while editing, or your editor has made you change it because it makes more sense to go the other direction. I think it's really more organic in that the story grows in a direction that I hadn't planned. Like I said, I really don't do a whole lot of outlining, a whole lot of planning for my novels. I never have. Really, I've tried a few times because I keep hearing about people who go, oh no, it's really helpful. And I can't do it. I just can't do it. Even when I've tried to write very, very loose outlines, as in like half a page for the entire novel type outlines, it's so different by the time I get done writing it that I probably could just recycle the outline for a different book. I can't tell you how many times I've had that happen for various short stories, short stories and things like that that I've worked on. So it's not so much about somebody outside of the book is making, is pressuring me or leading me in a direction. It's really more about the organic, here's where the story goes. Like I said before, to me, I'm just along for the ride. I'm writing the notes as it happens. And it just is a very organic way of things happening. On to question 4. Tell us about one character you became particularly fond of or grew to despise that you fleshed out more for your audience, and how with that character you went about giving them the depth you needed to make sure the audience stood up and took notice. Honestly, I think that's where Major Wade's book comes into the picture. Tattoos, the first book in the series, was a NaNoWriMo project from, I think it was 2011, was when I first drafted that one. And the 3 main characters from that book were Sean, Eli is the main character of Tattoos. His best friend Sean, who is in Scars, and that's his book. And then Major Wade. And Major Wade was one of those characters that really kind of, I don't really want to say lurks in the background, but is definitely taking more of a backstage position, allowing first Eli and then Sean to tell their stories. Um, but there was something about him that was just really compelling, that I really wanted to know more. I really wanted to understand more about him, and who he was and how he worked. Because in a lot of ways, he was really kind of that quiet, behind the scenes, he's really cool, but you don't really see it type character. And I really wanted to bring that out and show who he was. Because he really, to me, is the balance between Eli and Sean. Eli and Sean are great. They work well together. The two of them balance each other out. However, Major Wade is the one who makes that happen, who keeps both of them from going off the rails, because they can both go off the rails in some very different directions. And he was just really intriguing that way. So stay tuned, stay into the series. It gets interesting. And that book is really where that comes in, about Major Wade, and him being that character that I really needed to explore more. Last but not least, give us a non-spoiler moment in which a character spoke out against your judgment and changed something benign, but that ultimately might turn into a big deal. Oh boy. Trying to figure out what I can tell you that wouldn't be a spoiler, but also lets that happen. I would say, and I'll just put it this way, it comes from Major Wade, comes toward the end of Sean's book, where, of Scars, that is, where Sean gets a little impulsive. Well, maybe more than a little impulsive. He gets impulsive. He gets kind of ahead of himself sometimes. He's he can kind of get in your face, not in a bad way, but kind of a, just loud, brash, little bit sometimes impulsive type character. And Major Wade comes to his rescue. And this is not the first time that Major Wade has come to his rescue. It's happened at least a couple times prior to this particular instance. And Major Wade, during this particular scene, and I don't want to tell you exactly what's happening in the scene because otherwise that will give some stuff away, but he starts going over some military regulation type stuff. And it's all very cut and dried. This is military regulation type stuff that all of the characters in the Black Ops novels have to deal with. And yet it really becomes the impetus and becomes what starts a major shift in Major Wade's life, and really pulls in and starts his book. His story really continues in that spot. And it's all because he starts off by quoting, at the very end of Scars, he starts off, he goes on quoting about some military regulation stuff. And when I wrote that way, I knew that there were going to be some pieces that played into book 3, had not realized quite how much of an avalanche was starting by something as simple as a statement about, here's what military regulation says. So that's what I have for you. Come check things out. You can find me at www.thisisnothitchhikersguide.com. It's all one word. On all my social medias there. You can find me on Twitter at at Don't Panic 2011. You can also find me on Facebook. This is not hitchhikersguide.com. And let's see, where else can you find me? Three Furies Press. That's the other place you can find me. You can find me there. I do graphics for them. I write for them. Great place. And yeah, the rest of my social media is up there as well. Stay tuned. I'd love to connect, love to chat with you. Hit me up sometime. Thanks.